Hello and welcome to The Wire Live. Today's big topic is the 50% tariffs that Donald Trump has put on India, and they kick in today on the 27th of August. Now, it was Howdy Modi and Namaste Trump for the longest time. Now we have this tariff, 50% tariff. And the question that most people have been asking is this, that has the Modi-Trump bromance officially died? Now, we try to unpack some of this and try to understand what this tariff blow is going to be on the Indian goods primarily, and also the millions of jobs that are on the line. Now, we also try to understand if all of this is happening just because of a failure of a personal chemistry. So we try to unpack some of these real motives and also the viability of this so-called Swadeshi turn that the Indian government has been promoting as its response, and also what this means to India's sovereign choices and its position in the shifting global order. To speak with us today, we have Professor Mohsin Raza Khan, who is an Associate Dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs. Welcome to the show, Professor Khan.
Right.
So let's begin by speaking about some of the stated rationale and also some of the hidden agendas. Now, the White House frames this 50% tariff as a measure to end the Russia and Ukraine war. Now, how much of this do you think is a genuine policy objective of America, and how much of it do you think is a pretext for asserting unilateral American economic power and also simultaneously undermining India's sovereign economic choices?
It is absolutely an attempt at coercing India. There's no doubt about it. See, the 25% would have made sense. And America has done similar stuff with other countries, 15, 20%. It feels that India has high tariffs. They've called us tariff kings, Trump in the previous term also. But the additional 25% that they've put for Russian oil imports, they have not put on China, for example. They have not put on even Turkey. So you could say, okay, they didn't put on China because China has a lot of leverage. It's a big power, but Turkey also imports a large amount from Russia. They haven't put it on Turkey, which means that they're kind of singling out India. It's a pretext for deeper reasons. Primarily, I would say there are three. I mean, one, he wants a good trade deal for his base, which includes, agricultural access, dairy access, etc., and some on manufactured goods. He wants auto parts, etc., access. In India, it does impose a high amount of tariffs on these things. For example, imported automobiles are tariffs at more than 100% in India, and so too for other things. The second reason is basically he's angry about the fact that we didn't accept his mediation offer, that he had mediated the end of India-Pakistan conflict. Even today, he has again said something to the same effect, that he used the threat of tariffs on both India and Pakistan to get them to agree. And he said that I'm going to make your head spin. I'm going to put such tariffs. Just today, he said that again. And the third is, he feels that you're profiting from this Russia trade and thereby always having your cake and eating it too. This is something that Jaishankar and the Prime Minister Modi was very fond of saying, that, we can deal with anybody. We are, a swing country. We can do this, that. So he's actually showing you that you are not really as powerful as you think. That is, India is actually, in terms of material power, India is actually not a strong country. It's not a great power at all. As I said to you earlier, India has less than 2% of global trade, 1.8% of global merchandise trade, with 18%, 17% of the world's population. So less than 1/10 of what it should be.
Yeah.
India's in the services trade, India is just 4.6% of global services trade. India's per capita income is $2,700 compared to $90,000 for the United States and $14,000 for China. India is a $4 trillion economy compared to the United States' $36 trillion economy. So neither does India make any product that America can do without, cannot do without. For example, China makes rare earths or magnets, etc., that which US industry cannot function. So he's showing you, look, you don't make anything that we really need. We can replace you with a Vietnam or anybody else. And you're not just that powerful. And so India has become kind of collateral damage.
So speaking about sovereign economic choices, right? So one of the responses from the government has been this turn towards what it calls Swadeshi mantra. Now, the Prime Minister also has a label for it, like he has a label for everything, which is vocal for local, right? So that's what he says. And these also are coinciding with these 50% tariffs. Now, do you think this is some genuine strategic pivot towards any amount of self-reliance, if at all India can manage any self-reliance in terms of its economic choices? Or is it just like some reactive, rhetoric, to manage public perception?
It is totally rhetoric. And the similar rhetoric was unleashed by him when we had a fight with China. If you remember 5 years ago in Galwan, when China tried to coerce us, again, we came out with, oh, you must travel within India, even the tourism should be within India, etc., and Swadeshi and all of that. And again, the same humbug. India just doesn't have a big enough market to absorb. I'll give you an example. United States absorbs about 20%, roughly 18% of our merchandise exports. And in fact, more than 60% of our services exports is absorbed by the United States. Where will you sell this? There's no other market in the world. United States is 25% of the world economy. No other economy wants our stuff. As I explained to you earlier, we have a trade deficit with BRICS, $209 billion trade deficit with BRICS. United States is the only country in the world, large country, with which we have a trade surplus. Not only that, but our total exports to the United States are more than our total exports to all BRICS countries combined. So we just don't have any other place to sell it, and our own market is not big enough to absorb it domestically.
So, I mean, how does India achieve this Swadeshi without, severe dislocations for vulnerable workers and also small businesses especially?
My heart goes out to them, Pavan, because this is a double whammy for us. First of all, the sectors which Trump has targeted, which United States has targeted, are labor-intensive sectors like textiles, gems, shrimp farming, etc., auto parts. These are where our SMEs are. Our SMEs are the largest employers, not our big Adani, Ambani, large corporate. They don't employ. They're very capital intensive. Most of our employment isn't these SMEs. These people are going to suffer, and it's sad also because most of India's working population, 90%, is in the unorganized sector. Only 10% is in the organized sector. So many of these jobs were organized sector jobs with PFs, with provident funds, etc. These are the jobs we stand to lose, and through a multiplier effect, if we lose these jobs, a few million of these, it'll have a much larger multiplier effect. Luckily, right now, he isn't talking about services, because that's where our real chunk is. Even though they are middle and upper middle income people, but through a multiplier effect, they create many more jobs. So right now, that's off the table. But and also, one more good thing is that right now, pharmaceuticals and others have not been pulled. Electronics, like mobile phones, have not been pulled in. But were he to pull those in, we would be in deep trouble. 2% of our GDP is goods exports to the United States, and another 4 to 6% is services.
All right, so let's talk about foreign policy, because this is a talking point that most BJP supporters are putting out even now. One of the major reasons they say why they vote for this particular government, and especially Prime Minister Modi, is because somehow he's managed to create an image of India that is very, very favorable in the world right now. The Committee of Nations are looking at India in a very favorable position. Of course, the crude version of that is that India is a Vishwaguru. So I just quickly wanted to ask you, what will happen to, firstly, I want to know if India is already a Vishwaguru. If not, how is this Vishwaguru tag going to stick given this 50% tariff and the fallout of it?
India is very far from a Vishwaguru. I'll give you a simple calculation for that. So there is a professor at Tufts University called Michael Beckley, and he has a simple calculation, which Mearsheimer also gives a similar calculation for calculating national power. That is, you multiply the per capita income, square it, and multiply it with the population squared of a country. So a country becomes big and powerful in the international system if it has a big population with a big per capita income. So a country with a big per capita income but a small population like Switzerland or Singapore cannot be considered a great power. Or a country with a very large population like India's but very small per capita income, $2,700, cannot be considered. Why? Because most of that money goes in maintaining yourself. Most of the money that you earn in a poor country goes in feeding yourself, clothing yourself, shelter. So you don't have surplus left. It is that surplus which makes you a great power, because you can invest that in your investments. You can put that in your R&D. You can put that in your military. That's how you become a great power, with that surplus. So United States has a big surplus because United States has a big per capita income of $90,000 US. Similarly, other countries like China even though per capita income is lower, much lower than the United States, 1/5
Yes.
at 14,000, it is still 5 times India's per capita income with a similar population. So it can generate more surplus, which it can put in defense and R&D. And also a great country becomes great power by having a large range of technologies in which it is number one or number two or in the top rank. India is in none of those technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's cyber, whether it's biotechnology, whether it's chips. India is not in the top rank in any of these technologies. In fact, it's worse. India is not even the owner of any global brand. That is, when you think of United States, you will think of an iPhone. When you think of China, you will think of a BYD or a DeepSeek. Or if you think of Japan, you will think of Toyota, or whatever, Sony. But India doesn't produce any global brands. So really, the United States or the rest of the world is not dependent on us for anything. We don't produce anything. In fact, our manufacturing is so high priced and so low quality that we are not able to maintain a trade surplus with any of the other Asian countries either. We have a trade deficit with every Asian country, apart from maybe Philippines. We don't produce goods at a lower cost. We have a trade deficit even with ASEAN because our goods are just not competitive. We are just not a manufacturing power. Without that, how can you be a great power? Because of that, we don't have a defense industry. To be a great defense power, you have to produce your own weapons. For that, you have to have a manufacturing base. India's manufacturing base is just too weak. So what Donald Trump is doing is cutting us down to size. He's showing really who is Vishwaguru and who's not.
In fact, the per capita income is again an average measure. If you actually look at the median income, I'm sure it's going to be much lower than that.
Exactly. Even the per capita income flatters us at $2,700.
Because of the absolute inequality, the distribution also is sort of centered.
Correct. The per capita income is pulled up by the Adanis and Ambanis, the high at the tail end of the distribution. The actual median income would probably be less than $1,000.
Yeah.
That is per annum.
Per annum, yeah. So, I mean, just moving beyond this sort of personal chemistry, right? The Trump-Modi bromance. What does this episode reveal about the fragile and transactional nature of India's foreign policy, especially with this government over the last 10 years? And does it expose a fundamental miscalculation in relying on a personal rapport and, you were mentioning about India's brand, right? A lot of supporters from the BJP would say, and they're voting for Modi precisely because Modi is India's brand, right? So that is the understanding that they have. So does it expose a fundamental miscalculation in how, India's foreign policy is largely dependent on this personal rapport of Mr. Modi rather than on any robust, institutional frameworks as such?
Beautifully put. You're absolutely right. We keep saying that the Godi media keeps saying this is a master stroke and that's a master stroke. Actually, our foreign policy has been in free fall for a while. It's been a total disaster, whether it's in the neighborhood, whether it's abroad with the great powers, or whether it's with the United States or China, our rival China and Pakistan also. And what's the reason for that? There are at least three broad reasons. One is that foreign policy has become too ideologized. The Hindu-Muslim element has been moved into the foreign policy. This has led to a breakdown in our foreign policy with respect to Bangladesh, with respect to Pakistan, with respect to even neighbors who we otherwise would have been okay with. We don't have any fundamental problems. At least we didn't have any fundamental problems with Bangladesh or Maldives, etc. The second problem has been personalization of foreign policy. The feeling is that if you just hug people and kiss them and they'll give you whatever you want. That's not the way foreign policy works. It's based on interests and alignments and institutional processes. And this is what America is also showing now because of the highly personalized nature of Trump's foreign policy. We have these two personalized foreign policies colliding with each other, creating this kind of disaster that we have. So this personalization is another problem.
It's clearly working for Trump because Trump also instrumentalizes foreign policy like most leaders, but is doing it at a much more intense level and to shore up domestic support.
Yeah, and it's possible that Trump's foreign policy will also crash at some point. It's just not done so far because if you are a big enough power and if you have big enough leverage in the international system, you can survive for longer.
Right.
It's like you're too big to sink, but at some point even big objects sink. So the United States also might suffer. But the main problem is that you see, we are become so transactional and so ideological that we have lost sense of any realism in our foreign policy. We knew that these tariffs were going to come. We knew that Trump's behavior. We seem to have experts who are Vishwagurus and advise the world, the foreign minister and the prime minister, including Europe. We have been giving lectures to Europe about how they should have behaved with the United States and with Russia. But despite all of that, we have not Sorry. पानी
पीछे
Yeah, I was on personalization.
Yeah.
Despite our prime minister and our foreign minister giving advice to the world, to Europe, on how they should have behaved with Russia, how they should have behaved with the United States, we haven't inculcated any of that advice. We haven't followed the basic precepts of realism. That is, we have not seen the limits of our own power. Let the limits of your power define your ambitions, your objectives. We have gone for big ambitions, big objectives, while our power was limited. And foreign policy or international relations is a harsh school. There will be a stern reckoning. It will teach you what you can achieve, what you cannot, and it will cut you down to size if your ambitions exceed your power. We should have had a good sense of our intrinsic material power. This is the problem which led us to our conflict with China in 2019-20. We have been trying to push China by aligning with the United States. China didn't like that and it pushed back. Similarly, we have exceeded our power in the way we have behaved with Pakistan also, by constantly threatening to "Ghar mein ghus ke marenge," we'll enter your house and we'll beat you. We have led to a precipitation where Pakistan has now bended over to both China and to United States and is getting help from both. Similarly, with respect to United States, we should have realized the kind of power that the United States has over us. In fact, the United States has not fully exercised its power, I would say. Were it to extend its tariffs to, say, services or to pharmaceuticals or to any of these other areas, which like electronics, which it has kept out, we would be in deep trouble.
On this point, I wanted to quickly ask you, I mean, there's no reverse tariff from India, right? I mean, India hasn't done anything to tell the US that this is not cool, this is not okay.
There's a reason for that, because US is too powerful and too important for us, both in technology, in terms of market size, etc., and in terms of helping us in combating China. We need United States help. In Galwan also, United States was providing us with the troop intelligence through its satellites. Otherwise, we had no idea where the Chinese troop movements were. If we push back, United States can push back in multiple ways. We don't have any product that United States cannot do without. It will put sanctions. It could put more further tariffs. It could cut intelligence sharing. It could cut defense deals, including the jet engine that we want for our aircraft, other weapons that we need. So United States has many more leverage and levers over us,
including H-1B
exactly.
visas. A lot of them actually go and work
exactly.
in America. That is going to be a big fallout if at all India does.
H-1Bs would be a big fallout, but also the GCCs, the Global Capability Centers in Hyderabad, Pune, Bangalore, Noida, Gurgaon. All of these cities are running on those GCCs. They generate the cash, which through a multiplier effect fuels our economies. So we know not to push the United States, and that has been good advice being given to the government, and therefore the government has not retaliated with tariffs. That won't work, because that will escalate the issue, and Trump is not going to back down because he knows who's more powerful in this equation. Right. Even other countries which tried that have had to back down. Canada, Mexico, etc. have had to back down. The only country which is able to match the US to some extent, even not fully, is China. That's because they need China's critical minerals, rare earths, and magnets. So there is a reason why we have not pushed back.
Okay. So who else can India sell to, if not America? Do we have any options?
I would say none. I don't see anybody else who can absorb such a large amount of our exports. Not only that, but the global market is going to get more competitive, because just like we have been shut out of the US market, others have also been shut out. Those guys are more efficient producers, more efficient manufacturers. They will also be competing in those markets outside of the US. Therefore, not only will we lose our US market share if these tariffs are not quickly removed, I'm hoping that they will be, but we will also be squeezed in the other markets outside the US because the competition will be severe. In fact, the whole global economy might trade less after this, because once the US market is shut off for everybody, the total global exports may shrink. Further, in those remaining exports, others will flood the market, more efficient producers. One of the great threats that we are facing now is China. Not just we, the whole world is facing. China has built up so much surplus capacity in electric vehicles, in solar cells, in so many other technologies and products, that China is ready to flood the markets with far more than the world can absorb. Chinese factories are overproducing massive amounts of electric cars, regular cars, solar cells, and these they are planning to flood Southeast Asia, Africa, possibly India, Pakistan, Latin America. So we are going to face a much harsher market scenario. I'm just hoping that these tariffs are quickly brought down. If they're not, we'll be in deeper trouble than we anticipate right now.
Right. So you've mentioned China, right? So let's move. Let's talk about that now. The geopolitical fallout, right, of this. Of course, the tariffs arise from India's relationship with Russia, but they are also, in a sense, pushing India into a very precarious situation with China. Although China is saying that we are standing with you, you're welcome, and all of that. How might these tariffs actually force a recalibration of India's strategic autonomy, especially in South Asia vis-a-vis China? And what does this imply for our neighborhood policy overall?
It implies terrible stuff ahead. We have, in a way, kind of surrendered to China, I would say. Yeah. We were kind of, despite Galwan, we were trying to push back with the help of the US. In one way, militarily, we were trying to maintain the borders, even though we are much weaker than China in terms of defense capabilities. But what we were doing was we were kind of subsidizing, we were kind of bribing China, because China has $100 billion trade surplus with us, hoping that this would prevent it from taking more aggressive action towards us. Though we had prevented Chinese further investments in India, we were trying to also restrict Chinese imports into India to some extent, but not too much. Now we have gone ahead with China and we have said, okay, we'll make an agreement with you on investments. You can come and invest here, which means slowly China may take over our economy, which means Chinese exports may flood our markets. China is already entering most of South Asia. China is flooding Pakistan, Nepal with electric vehicles with solar cells. China is going to soon be flooding Bangladesh as well. There's a very deep relationship, and Sri Lanka. That means China is basically taking over our whole neighborhood, because of its economic might, its productive capacity. Slowly, if we surrender on economic matters to China, it will also flood our markets. We are not as competitive. It was China because of which we did not enter the RCEP regional grouping, trade grouping, because we were afraid that China would get a free pass into India. We had been resisting this, but now the kind of ricochet that we have done, the rebound, just like with personal relationships, it's very bad to go on a rebound to somebody in international relations, because Chinese are perceiving this as a surrender. If you look at Chinese media, if you look at Chinese think tanks, they're saying, finally, India is surrendering. But they will not accept this surrender. They think this is India and Modi are not trustable. They feel that this is just for show and temporary setback, but you will have to prove to us. So they're saying you will have to allow BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, to come into India.
Yeah.
They're saying prove to us by opening your markets to us. They're saying prove to us by entering the Shanghai Cooperation in a full way, cooperating with us. That is, they want basically to take over. They're saying, show us that you're credibly coming towards the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, towards show us that you will stop taking part in the Quad. The Chinese think tanks are saying, prove to us. So in a way, they want a complete surrender from us. They're saying, decide the border issue in our favor. This is terrible. Already many of the patrolling points, many of the areas which India used to patrol up till 2019, we cannot go there anymore. There's a movie being made on the 1962 war on Major Shaitan Singh, the hero who died, who was martyred at the border with China. And there was a Samarak memorial made for him at where he fell. But we can't access that. We have had to move it into our territory because that territory has now been permanently taken over by Chinese troops. China considers it to be their territory. So we have actually moved the memorials for our martyrs. A movie is now being made on him by Farhan Akhtar, etc. It's going to come out soon.
Yeah.
So in a way, we are surrendering, and nobody is questioning this. Godi media is showing this as if some kind of a masterstroke that the Prime Minister has gone to the Chinese and the Foreign Minister is going to Chinese, as if it's some kind of masterstroke. This is not a masterstroke. We are kind of agreeing to their terms of taking over South Asia. And if they take over South Asia, basically Chinese have taken over Asia. Trump doesn't seem to care that America will be pushed to the edges of Asia. But we should, because we have to live with China. Yeah. China is our primary rival, not Pakistan. Pakistan is just another appendage of China. China is using Pakistan. A country, we are going to China when just until a few months ago, it was using another country to attack us. The conflict that we had with Pakistan was basically a proxy conflict with China. It's not a conflict just with Pakistan. What kind of a masterstroke is this?
So you're saying that the Chinese are going to extract more than the pound of flesh, right, from India. Now, moving beyond that, and also the macroeconomics, what is going to be the human cost of all of this, right? Primarily, the real impact that will be felt by ordinary Indians, especially cotton farmers, shrimp farmers, leather exporters, textile workers, and so on. So, what mechanism should be, put in place to sort of absorb this hit? What can we do?
Sorry, see, my heart goes out to them. I don't know how the government, other than by giving some credit or by giving them some subsidies or tax breaks, can help them. The problem with credit also is that you can give them credit only if this is expected to be a short-term thing. If this is expected to be beyond a few months or a year or more, then giving credit is actually putting them in trouble, because you're putting them under debt. It's not actually helping them. So the government will have to figure out ways, because millions of these workers, and when I'm saying millions, I'm including everybody, including textile, including auto parts workers, SMEs, cotton, shrimp farmers, etc., etc. They will be in trouble, no doubt about it. Our first attempt should be to make sure that these tariffs come back down to something reasonable, like around 20% as soon as possible. We should negotiate with the United States. Meanwhile, we have to provide them with all kinds of subsidies, etc., to make them survive, because they will definitely suffer, and there's no other. We don't have social security in this country, so you can imagine what's going to happen.
Simultaneously, the FTA discussions are also happening. I don't know if they're still continuing or they've been temporarily suspended. But what sort of an impact that will have? Is that going to help ease any of these?
Not at all. It's not going to ease. I'll tell you. The government, the Modi government, has been very upset with all the FTAs so far, because in each FTA, India was not competitive enough. So whether it was with Southeast Asia, whether it was with any of our East Asian neighbors, let's say Japan, South Korea, etc., we have just, it's been one-sided. That is, we have ended up importing most of the goods. So they have not been in our favor. Therefore, the FTA that we have with the UK is actually a very limited one. It can barely be called an FTA, in my opinion, if you honestly look at it. I'm not very hopeful that this will boost our trade by any multiple. Similarly, with the European Union, it's taken years and years, and nothing has come of it, precisely because they want us to open our market, and we know that, again, we'll end up with a trade deficit. That's why we didn't join the RCEP trade grouping. So I'm not very expectant or very hopeful that these trade groupings, either with the Middle East, etc., also, we don't. We need internal reforms, both, land reforms, etc., and labor, red tape, ports, infrastructure, etc. We need many kinds of internal reforms. Only then we will become a little bit more competitive for manufacturing, etc. In the absence of which, we remain, despite low labor costs, we remain actually a high-cost producer, also with low quality and inefficiency. So, and that's why we are not getting a lot of FDI either, because people don't want to use India as a manufacturing base, because they feel that India is okay for supplying the Indian market, or maybe one or two countries around, or maybe Africa, but India is just not competitive enough to supply in the global developed country market. So I'm not very hopeful that FTAs are going to solve our problem. What we need is the second generation of reforms. We need deep reforms. That's the only way we'll become competitive. And I can go on, but we are faced with a real tsunami coming up, because our labor working age population is increasing because of our youth bulge. We don't have enough jobs for them. On top of that, we are ending up with a lot of automation. Not only in automation, now we have AI also. So just TCS the other day has fired 12,000 people, engineers, because AI is taking over their jobs. So we could end up with a severe problem. That is, India could become old before it becomes rich. The hope was that this youth bulge, if they can find jobs and we can provide them jobs, will make us rich and take us into middle income and upper middle income, and forget about developed country status, which they're talking about 2047, but maybe even middle income or upper middle income. But if we are not able to find them jobs, what's going to happen is these people are going to age. They're going to be a drain.
This demographic dividend is going to turn into a disaster.
It's going to turn into disaster. They're going to become old, and we will remain poor. So we will not make that transition even into middle income. Even what China was able to achieve seems like a far throw. Forget about OECD and developed country status. Even China, which is still a middle income country, even reaching that might become a nightmare.
All right. One final question, right? So the hope is that we can reduce the tariffs from 50% to 20%, or the best case scenario would be that there's a temporary suspension. But do you think even after that happening, some of this lost image, both externally and also internally for the union government, can be restored?
That's a good question, because it's a political question ultimately. Ultimately, all questions of economics are also political questions, right? Yeah. Who gets what, how, and when?
Yeah.
These are ultimately political questions, even though we think of them as economic questions. Will the government's image be restored? Difficult to say. I don't see the trust coming back in the India-US relationship, no matter what happens. Media will play it up, especially Godi media as masterstroke, etc., and they'll try to restore the government and the Prime Minister's image. But I think it's taken a definite hit, because what we were told was this is a strong man who's made us Vishwa Guru and he's taking us forward. But it appears that he's been cut down to size, not just by the United States, but by China. And even with this conflict with Pakistan, it doesn't appear like we have achieved supremacy over them, despite we might think so in the internal media, but the global media, whether you open the New York Times, Economist, etc., they look at it as a fair square match, So I don't know how it will be restored. I don't see, and the way we are pivoting towards China, it will be very difficult to now hide the fact that we have actually kind of surrendered to China as well. So I don't see how this image is going to be restored, but you never know. Godi media will do its best. And
Right. All right. Thank you so much for this discussion, Professor Mohsin. There you have it. This is a developing story, and we hope that you follow the wire. And that's all we have today on the live show. And until then, take care. We'll see you tomorrow.